I'm not putting a date on this. I'm just saying welcome back. This is going to be part two. I'm going to talk about Old Faithful Yellowstone National Park and my adventures that I had back in the 2000 mid to late 2000s. Um, so here we go. I got the chance to go to work a summer. It would have been my second time working in Yellowstone National Park. Um, Now, at the time, I was married, so I kept in contact with my wife. If you watched part one, you know kind of the beginnings of what happened. Um, but just as a refresher, I was getting tired of being in Yellowstone, or not Yellowstone, excuse me, in New York. Um, the frustrations, the stresses, the negative energy, the attitude, the whole nine yards that a person like me can't really adjust to in New York. I'm not physically or psychologically or even spiritually um, set for a big hustle bustle city like that. I think the only reason why I lasted so long in Yellowstone, not Yellowstone, I'm sorry, my mind is on Yellowstone, in New York is for my wife. Um, but I went to Yellowstone and I got to work at Old Faithful, what we call the Old Faithful Station. And again, my second time around, I worked fast food because I like food. I like working with food. Um, Before I started going on my diet, my body would have said I like food. Period, and I do. I won't deny me that. But this time around was more interesting. Um, just like the first time around, you get to your duty station or your location where you'll be working, and you have to go through a seminar. And usually it's a one and done type seminar. It's like maybe an hour, a little bit longer at Old Faithful because there's more dangers at the Old Faithful location. So we had to go through the seminar, which I remember the first time I went. It was like, okay, yeah, bears. Okay, we do this for bears. Blah 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 blah. Blah bears. Okay, backcountry. Okay, blah blah blah. We got to get this permit for backcountry. You got to mine this. Got to do this. Got to do that. But you know, and I was just kind of like I was sitting there listening to it, and I'm like, okay, this is I remember this. I remember this. Then they started to talk about Old Faithful. Now, Old Faithful is the heart or the bottom of the Yellowstone caldera. Now, anybody who studied volcanoes know what a caldera is. It is the bottom of the volcano, but because the factor it's been dormant for thousands of years, there's no dangers except for you just have to be minding your p's and q's. Now, one of the things they tell you is when you're going out into the caldera to go look at the geysers, because there's dozens of different geysers to go look at. Stay on the designated path. Most of the designated path is easy to stay on because it's a wooden walkway. It's basically looks like a train track waiting for the metal rails. The reason why they want you to do this is because the factor it's been tested over time to make sure it's safe for you to go out there. If you go off the path, even though you might see, oh look, the bison have been off the path. I can walk where the bison went. No, bison have a interesting ability to sense where things are safe and where things aren't safe. But just because you happen to see a couple of tracks of bison, one or two bison who ventured out onto the actual crust of the earth, um, does not mean you can. There has been dozens of horror stories of people who died because they went off the track. And they even the park rangers even tell you be mindful of children. Make sure they don't venture off because they will or could die. Sounds horrible. Yes, it is. Because if you fall through the crust, and the crust could be anywhere from inches thick to feet thick, we don't know. Above waters reaching 300 plus degrees. That's basically going to boil you right there on the spot. You will die a excruciating, painful death because you're being boiled alive. Now, I read a book and I wanted to buy it, but I didn't. It's called 1001 Ways to Die in Yellowstone National Park. And a good chunk of that book is being boiled to death by, falling through the earth. Other ways to die is being mauled by a bear, being gored by an elk, extreme frigid cold air during the wintertime, various different ways of dying naturally. In harsh climates, animal related follies of your own accord. But part of that seminar was basically how to basically stay safe in the caldera. Now, Old Faithful is great because you could literally set your watch plus or minus 10 seconds to the geyser going, Old Faithful going off. Now, I did not get to be there during the wintertime, even though they do have, in fact, I was offered a winter position by my supervisor at Mammoth Hot Springs, or not Mammoth, Old Faithful Hot Springs Geyser Grill is what we were called. But because being married and whatnot, I'm pretty sure Jerry would have had a tizzy. I said, no, thank you. My wife would kill me. Of course, my supervisor said, if she can find you. But that's how much he wanted me to stay. I mean, he literally wanted me to. I started out as just a basic cashier, and the person he wanted to put in charge of being a cashier just up and left. I don't know why, he just up and left. They loved me as a head supervisor, as a cashier, because not only of my linguistic skills in German, but my ability to slow things down and comprehend as best as I can what a lot of our guests were trying to say. Because when I was there, we had a lot of guests from Asia, China, Japan, mostly. I think we had some people from like either Korea or some other Indonesian location. We had people from France. We had people from Russia. We did have a couple guests from Germany, as well as various parts like Central and South America. I think we had every nationality come through except for maybe people from Africa. But we had a lot of different Europeans and a lot of different, mostly Europeans and Asians. I said European and Asians too, basically because we had people, like I said, Germany, France, China, Japan, possibly Indonesia. I think we even had one or two couples from Australia, and maybe a family from one of the different Hispanic-speaking locations. And the only reason why I say it that way is because the fact that they could have been from Texas or Arizona, that were Hispanic families that spoke mostly one of the different Hispanic dialects. But I loved it at Old Faithful because not only did I get the chance to interact with a lot of the foreign nationals who were coming to visit the park, but a lot of my coworkers were from places like I had one who was from, can't remember the exact country, but they came from one of the old USSR. Wasn't Ukrainian? Wasn't Czechoslovakia? Oh, that's gonna rattle in my brains for a while. But a couple of my coworkers who spoke perfectly good English were from one of the old Russia. I'm just gonna say Russia, one of the Russian countries, because even though that they have their own sovereign governments and whatnot, they were originally part of the USSR coalition, whatever you want to call them. But I enjoyed working with the various cultures and whatnot, various linguistic people. It was fun. It was a great learning experience and whatnot. The only thing about that particular time working there is our employee head cook, basically the head cook for our. We had two different employee cafes. One, our cafeterias. One was in the Snow Lodge building, and the other one was in the Old Faithful Inn, the original Old Faithful Hotel. Um, and that was so beautiful. I wish I had pictures of that because it was like they got somebody from Switzerland to build it look like an old Swedish ski lodge, and it was like the inside. You can look up and see all the way up the roof, and you can see like balconies for the different guest rooms, and you can. It was just beautiful. It was great. It was awesome. But the chef was a vegan. I have nothing wrong with vegans except for when they try to cook meat. When you broil or however he cooked pork chops, they're not supposed to come out gray and slimy looking. They're supposed to look a little brown, and I don't know what he did to half the meats that he made. I mean, he had a perfectly delicious salad bar, but when it came to the cooked meats, it was like one, it tasted nasty because it was like bland and flavorless and waterlogged. And I was just kind of like, can we get somebody who knows how to make meat to cook the meats? But otherwise, again, if I went down to the employee cafe knowing that we had bison burgers upstairs and the meat of the day looked like who done it and ran, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going upstairs for a bison burger. Uh, won't pass that up. But between walking walking around the geyser basin, going into the backcountry, hopping, and I found out, I did not know this back when I was at Mammoth, but I found out when I went to Old Faithful. If they have openings in the tour buses, basically when they take people on tours, as an employee, you get to go on that bus for free. You just have to show them your employee ID card and like, yeah, let's see if we have any space. Yeah, there's only 3 people going on this bus. Go ahead, jump in. And I would go, and even though inside the bus there was a driver and a tour guide, I love the fact that most of the time the tour guide knew about the geological information and geological aspect, but when it came to like the different animals, it was like, not to be a nosy or not to be butting into your job, but guest has a question about this particular animal. Do you have any information, or do you want me to tell them what I know? Because we saw on one part of the tour, we saw a family of grizzly bears, and the one of the 3 people, it was a family group, mom, dad, and older daughter. Older daughter was on furlough from the military, and they wanted to go try to get as close to the bears as possible. And I was like, no, ma'am. You don't want to get within 50 yards of that mama grizzly with babies because she will tear you apart. No questions asked. It's all a defense mechanism because it's a mama grizzly who's smaller than a male grizzly, and she's got cubs. She'll face off with a big boar grizzly, big old male grizzly. She won't care. Things like that. And then we got to a spot, there was nobody there, like nobody was taking the walking part of the tour. And we got out of the tour bus to walk around to look at a couple mud pots, which basically a mud pot is a big old hole in the ground filled with water and dirt. Makes it look like a mud pot, boiling mud cauldron. Smells like rotten eggs, and some of them hiss, some of them boil, some of them just sit there and look like somebody's just rocking the boat type ordeal. Then you got the fumaroles, which are just basically look like giant cones that are steaming like crazy and making whistling noises when they're steaming, things like that. We got to see those up close and personal. And then when we walked back to what we call it a bus, but it was like a 9-passenger minivan or 9-passenger van. When we got back to it, the van was literally engulfed. Not really engulfed, but there was like ravens all over the van and all around the van, and I just kind of went, cool. And this was before I knew a lot about Norse mythology, and I look back at it going, Odin was trying to say something, but I don't know what, because I didn't know nothing about the full spectrum. But it was kind of fun to see all these ravens wanting to be around the van. In fact, one of them was perched on the driver's driver's outside mirror. And the driver had fun trying to get into the vehicle because the raven didn't quite want him to get in the vehicle. Kept on like flapping its wings and cawing at him. But we got into the vehicle, and it's like, well, how are we going to leave? This bird does not want this particular raven did not want to get off the mirror. And so he like backed up and started slowly driving, and then as he was getting ready to start picking up speed, the bird finally got the idea and flew off. But it was something to see. And then one of the other things I remember about Old Faithful is there was one day I worked a morning shift, so I worked breakfast to the end of the lunch rush. Now, when we talk about a rush around Rolla, we're talking about 10, 12 people. In Yellowstone, you can literally calculate the rush by the activity of the geyser of Old Faithful. And I would be the one sitting here behind my cashiers, because I was the one who basically helped the cashiers, helped serve the food, doing back and forth. And I would sit there and we would be like nobody. And I see the guys go off, and I roll up my arm sleeve and go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, here comes the rush. And we would have hundreds of people come rushing towards our building. Now, not every one of them came in for fast food. Some of them came for over next door for souvenirs. Some people went further over for the actual diner part, the actual eat-in diner. And I would be basically, not rushing around like a chicken with my head cut off, because we had a crew. There'd be 3 cashiers, 3 people to serve to serve the food, 2 people in the back making sure we're cooking up the burgers and whatnot. Then we'd have at least 2 to 3 people putting the food together to put on the trays for us, the servers, to hand off to the customers, or call out the customer's number and hand it off to them. And just, we were a well-oiled machine. Let's just put it that way. We were, by the time we opened to the general public, we were a well-oiled machine. And one of the things that we do to make sure that we're not only just a cohesive, well-oiled machine, but before we opened to the general public, we would have what we call a mock opening. And mock opening is basically the employees who worked at Old Faithful would come into our building, our restaurant, our facility, order a lunch, and we would learn how to work cohesively. And they did that for the Geyser Grill. They did that for the Snow Lodge Diner. They did that for the Old Faithful fast food and diner, and what we call a ice creamery, which is basically you go in there and you can order sundaes or ice cream cones or various cold dessert products. And then they had a sandwich shop where you can go in there and grab and go, basically grab a pre-made sandwich and go. Then in fact we had grab and go, ice creamery, the 2 diners, the 2 fast food places. So we had 6 different eateries or places you can grab food, plus 1, two, three to four souvenir shops, and then we had the Yellowstone Trading Company, which was a separate entity. They operated on their own operations, but we all operated at a federal level because we were on federal grounds, and if the company did not keep up the federal standards, the company could lose their contract with the government to operate within Yellowstone National Park. And Yellowstone National Park is, I mean, cha-ching! It is literally the moneymaker for anybody who gets the contract to operate within federal, federally protected parks. So Xanterra has basically all the different parks. They have Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, Mount Rushmore, Big Bend, which is down in Texas, Denali, Alaska. They have basically all the national parks under their belt in contract with the government back then. I don't know who's operating it now. I think they still are, which is awesome for them to hold the contract for a decade or more, because that means they are operating at the highest level with the highest promise to the government. And the government is going, you've done well so far, we're going to keep you. But it was great to be there. My dorm this time around, thankfully, was nowhere near the employee pub, what we call the employee pub, so I didn't have to worry about being kept up until 2 o'clock in the morning for base. But there was one morning, and I tried to say this earlier, and I went someplace else. There was one morning I worked the breakfast time, 6 o'clock in the morning to about 2 p.m., and I was exhausted because the night before I had trouble falling asleep. I don't know what kept me awake or what was going on that kept me awake, but I was tired. I was exhausted, so I went and lay down for a nap. And it was warm outside, so I kept the curtain closed, but I opened the window so I can have like fresh mountain air coming in. But I was woken up by a sound, and I was like, "What is that noise?" The weird sound is a combination of. It sounded like something breathing heavily while chewing on something, and then I got a whiff. I'm like, what is that smell? And instead of like flinging my curtains open, I like got close to the window and I realized it's coming from outside my window, literally right outside my window. I gently pull open the curtain, and standing right there, chewing on the tuft of wild grass outside my window, was a full-grown bison. And I'm like, dude, I know the inherent dangers and whatnot, but if there wasn't a screen on that window, I could practically reach out and touch him. That's how close he was. And I'm like, I know the dangers. I can't do nothing. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to make loud noise or movement, because they're they have poor eyesight, but they have excellent smell and excellent hearing. And I just gently stood there with the curtain barely open enough for me to see his head. And I'm like, man, to be that close to a wild animal, touching distance. The only thing between me and him is a bug screen and a wall. And probably not a very thick wall, I'm not sure. But it was just like crazy close. And I would love to be able to reach out and touch him, but I knew better. So I let him go about his business, and after about, I'd say 5-10 minutes of just standing there watching him, I gently closed the curtain and let him go about his business, because I was getting hungry and it was close to dinner time, so I went to go find something to eat. Most likely one of his cousins. I don't know. I can't remember what I ate that day. But, yeah. The experience was well worth the 3 months of being there. My contract was actually for longer. I cut my contract in half because Jerry and I realized that, one, the two of us being apart for such a long time was not easy on either one of us. Financially, it was not easy on us. Period. Literally, a quarter of my income was going to, you don't live there. You're not there for free. You do pay out of your income X amount of dollars for room and board, basically room and your meal plan, your meal and whatnot. So it wasn't like I'm earning money and being there for free. Then there was the other quarter. It was like a quarter of it was going to room and board, a quarter of it was going to income tax. So she was only getting half of a paycheck, and that wasn't enough to sustain paying our bills and whatnot. And so I just noticed that hair is sticking out. So I ended up cutting my contract in half due to hardships. But for I was supposed to be there from early April to late November. I ended up cutting it after 3 months because of the hardships. The other thing that happened that was at Old Faithful that I was like, it brung a smile to my face, is the third building that basically it was, so there was 7 different places to eat, was the what we call a cafeteria. Basically what it is, it's a buffet. Customers come in, they grab their tray, they go along this line or these 2 different lines and take what they want or order what they want for food. They watch them prepare it in front of them and whatnot. There's that, and then there's that at the one building in the middle is a seating area, an observation room for the wintertime for people who don't want to be out in the cold to watch Old Faithful, because the Old Faithful and Mammoth Hot Springs are in operation all year round except for mid-December to February, because that is their coldest months, and that's when the whole park basically shuts down and gives everybody a chance to go home, be with family during Christmas and New Year's, and then come back and slowly start opening things up. But the seating area has a fireplace. Now, the fireplace has a couple cracks and holes along the mantle. And during the summertime, when the fireplace is not going, chipmunks have access to the interior of the building. And these little chipmunks will come in and they'll look for scraps of food, see if they can get a free handout, things like that. They just scurry about looking for food. I've even seen 1 or 2 of them try to get into the cafeteria area and kind of get ushered right back out by people. So that was cute to watch them come and go, standing on their hind legs like, hey, you got something for me? I'm hungry. You got something? There's also a spot that you can go there to go to and get like an ice cream cone. Somebody's there to basically scoop out the ice cream, put it on a cone or in a bowl or whatever. There's also the front desk for what we call the frontier cabins. These frontier cabins are basically cabins for guests to rent. They can be full-blown family cabins, which have a mini kitchen and bathroom area, or they can be basic cabins that have no real amenities except for a bed and some electricity, and anybody who are renting those have to go to the public bathrooms. The public bathrooms are basically bathrooms with shower stalls in mass. The only thing blocking you from the general public is a curtain or door. And public coin-operated washing machines, which can be used by employees and guests. There are a couple of cabins that are basically set aside for upper level employees like managers. Um, in fact, one of my managers at the grill was living in one of these frontier cabins, and she said the only thing about the frontier cabin that I don't like is the fact that it does not have a private bathroom. And I went, so your cabin for an employee does not have anything except for like a bedroom area, a small little kitchenette, and a potbelly stove to keep you warm during cold nights. And she's like, yeah, I don't use a potbelly stove because I'm afraid of, something catching fire. And I don't really use the kitchenette because I don't cook anything in the kitchenette. I'm like, well, how do you cook? Does it have a stove? No, you use a potbelly oven or potbelly furnace to cook your food on top of. And I'm like, I know how that works, but why wouldn't they allow the employee cabins to have bathrooms? And she's like, oh, a couple of them do, but not all of them. And I met a couple who is like their permanent year-round residents that have a full-blown cabin with kitchen, refrigerator, potbelly stove for keeping the house warm, the cabin warm, and an actual full-fledged bathroom, toilet, and shower. But besides the front desk for getting your key for the cabin and whatnot, they have a bookstore and a souvenir shop. And I'm like, that's not bad. It's pretty nice. It's cute to see the little chipmunks running around. It's one of two of the year-round. No, frontier cabins are only during the summertime. The only people living in the frontier cabins during the wintertime are year-round employees that want to live in a cabin, which I'll be honest with you, I'd be up for it. As long as my cabin has potbelly stove, a kitchenette, and a bathroom, I would live in it. Jerry might have problems because there wouldn't be enough room for all her stuff, but other than that, besides that, I have a feeling if Jerry could function on her feet for long periods of time, she would be a great hostess for the front desk of the Snow Lodge, the Snow Lodge is interesting. The Snow Lodge only has X number of rooms to rent, but during the winter season when there's no employees in one or two of the dormitories, mine and another one that's within walking distance of the building, during the wintertime, they're used for guests. They actually clean them up and use them as guest rooms, basically hotel rooms, however you want to put it. Because the average room for the employees has two beds, two twin-sized beds, a bathroom. Some of them are Jack and Jill bathrooms. A cabinet, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it. It looks like half cabinet, half desk. It's got room for clothing and whatnot, drawers and whatnot, a spot where you can have hanging stuff, and then a spot to sit for like a writing desk. During the summer months when employees are living in them, the employees have to basically split that unit in half to share. Squirrel, I'm sorry, I heard what sounded like one of my chickadees that were nesting in the little nest box outside squawking away, and I thought I saw movement, so I wanted to double check. I guess if he was out there, he was only there for a short period of time because the sound died off and looked like he might have flown away. But anyhow, yeah, we had some great adventures there in Yellowstone. In fact, this last part, I don't mean it as a dig or a negative comment or anything like that, so please don't take it like that. My roommate when I was there at Old Faithful was a big, looked like a football player from Detroit, Michigan, African American. Great person. He was nice, quiet, but nice. We worked the same. We both worked at Geyser Grill. He was one of the cooks. One of the people who worked in the back behind the service area. We invited him. A bunch of us who worked in the same area, but we all didn't stay in the same dormitory. Some of them, me and this gentleman, lived in the Onyx dormitory, and most of the people who lived in Onyx were adults, either married adults or mature. The mature group of the people who were above 30, 30 or older, while everybody else who were young adults or teenagers lived in, I forgot the name of their dorm, but they lived in a different dorm. There was like 5 different dorms for the Old Faithful area. But anyhow, I got to know him pretty well. I'm in Detroit, Michigan. Just got divorced. Wanted to get out of Detroit for a while. And I was like, oh, well, this is a great place to get away from everybody, because, I mean, this is a place where not only can you enjoy working a nice, decent job, you get to know new people and whatnot, and get to know a lot of different things. And, it's quiet. Nobody's going to, come down here and cause any problems. And he was jokingly going, yeah, I came to Yellowstone because I know my wife would be nowhere near Yellowstone. And I went, okay, whatever. And then he's a quiet guy. He spent some time in the employee gym or the employee lounge area where they have like a basketball court, some weights, books that you can borrow, like a mini library, things like that. And I was in there from time to time reading, mostly, not into sports. I wasn't into the gym scene. I would go to see if there was any like employee activities. I bought a shirt that I don't wear much anymore because the armpits are basically fading, ripping out, that have the Yellowstone employee logo and a whole 9 yards. I bought souvenir, cups and souvenirs, employee type souvenirs that were employee only type things. Basically, they had a roster that if you wanted to go to Bozeman, Montana, they had to go to the mall or to a bookstore or something that basically could be considered a group activity. You can put your name on there and be at the stop, and we get into a 9-passenger van and travel the 2.5 hours to Bozeman, spend the day in Bozeman, and then 2 hours back to Bozeman. So basically you'd have to have money for whatever you're going to buy, plus you'd have to have money for at least lunch and dinner. But we got to go on that. I got to go multiple times. And I would mostly go up there to go to the bookstore and then go to Walmart for certain supplies that I couldn't buy at the trading company. That in fact was cheaper. I'd only use the trading company for emergency stuff like, oh, I'm out of laundry. I need laundry detergent. So, but there was one day a bunch of us had off from work, and we were like, hey, let's do something fun. The bus isn't going into to Bozeman, so let's do something fun, like go for a walk in the backcountry. And it's like, oh yeah, sure, I wouldn't mind doing that. I had, it's not in this room, a big old walking stick. Because one of the things the ranger said, if you go into backcountry, take a walking stick, tie some bells around the walking stick, or make noise as you're, talk loudly, make noise with the walking stick. That way you scare away the snakes from the vibrations. You scare away any possible predators because of the noise, because most of them don't like noise, and bears don't like noise. The big cats don't like noise. Most of your predators will scatter. And right there behind some of the frontier cabins of Old Faithful was I call it a stream. Some people call it a river. I'm like, it's not wide enough to be a river. It had constant water flow, and it wasn't. You can walk through it even though you might not want to, because it might be a little warmer than you like to deal with. But I always liked going there to sit, because there was always in this one spot that I sat There was always a couple swans. There was always some kind of waterfowl. Um, I see every so often otters. We had otters there in Yellowstone. Maybe once in a while I see a marmot, which is a type of weasel related to ferrets. Um, get to watch various wildlife while sitting there by the stream, listening to the trickle or the flow of the water. But and my roommate didn't even want to do that because it's too far. It wasn't very far, but it's too. It was, I say, a good 5 to 10 yards away from the cabin, so you wouldn't have a lot of background noise. But he was like, "No, that's too far." And well, I didn't know that. I didn't know his rhyme or reason for wanting to go that far away from the buildings. But we invited him. He goes, "No, no, no, I'm not going walking in the woods." And I went, "Why? You'll be safe. There'll be a bunch of us. We'll all make noise, and you know." He goes, "No, no, I don't want to go in the woods." I'm like, "Dude, as long as we follow what the rangers tell us, we should be okay." He goes, "No, no." I'm like, "Okay, you got to tell me why. You can't just tell me no, because every time you tell me no, I'm gonna give you a reason that there's a yes." And he was like, "You'll never catch a black man in the woods." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you'll never catch a black man in the woods." And I'm like, "Dude, you're a good hour away from civilization, except for what we're in right now at Old Faithful. You're surrounded by 3.3 million acres worth of forest. If you don't want to be in a forest, why are you even in Yellowstone other than to get away from home?" And he goes, "I just don't want to go walking through the woods." I'm like, "Brother, I'll tell you this right now. I guarantee you, you'll be safe. I won't let nothing happen to you. You won't come. If you listen to what I tell you to do and you listen to what the Rangers told us, you should not come into any trouble, any harm." He goes, "No, I don't want to do it." I'm like, "You gotta get out and do some more do something more adventuresome than being just stuck here in Old Faithful." He goes, "Well, I don't want to go in the woods." I said, "You know what? Next time, I'm gonna next time I have off, because I'm already gonna go for this walk. You and I are gonna go over to see if anyone on the tour bus has room for the two of us. We're gonna go for a tour. We'll be in the bus. We'll be safe. We'll be around other people. We won't walk through the woods. But dude, you've got to do something more than just stay here in the room or stay over in the gym or work. You got to do something fun." He goes, "Maybe." I'm like, "All right, I'll take you on that maybe for a tour. I'll see you later." We went for a walk. We didn't have any problems. I mean, we spotted in the distance. We did spot a black bear who, as soon as it saw us and heard the noise, ran the other direction. We've seen plenty of elk in Buffalo, and they didn't disturb us. You know, we saw all kinds of little critters and whatnot running around the woods and whatnot. Didn't have any problems whatsoever. But I thought it was funny because, like, you don't want to go through the walk in the woods, but you'll be here in Yellowstone when you're surrounded by woods and animals and whatnot. It's like, come on. This is not fun. It's not even thriving, let alone surviving. It's just being stalemated. But everybody to their own. I mean, I couldn't fault him for maybe he's never been in the woods. Maybe he's not one of these wildlife woodland type people like I am. He just, like you said, came to Yellowstone to get away from a divorce, or to get away from a divorced life, whatnot. Don't know, but it was fun, and I when I did my contract and whatnot, I knew I was only going to be up there for a short period of time because that's what my contract was for. The difficulty of keeping in contact with Jerry Ann via telephone is unless you sign on for a special phone or get a phone that is designed for the local environment and whatnot. T-Mobile, which I cannot fault T-Mobile. T-Mobile has excellent service. It's just in certain areas like Yellowstone National Park, it's spotty. And in order for me to have a conversation with Jerry, is one, I could not be in a building. Two, I had to find myself a location that was as clear as possible, and the clearest possible signal I could get was sitting at one of the benches observing Old Faithful. And I know Jerry Ann was very happy to have me come back home. When I came back home, I was happy to be home, even though I wanted so much to basically say, we're going to next year or whenever go visit Yellowstone. We're going to go to Yellowstone for a week. And Yellowstone has, Gardner has hotels, West Yellowstone has hotels, Cody has hotels, Jackson Hole, which is the south gate of Yellowstone, has hotels. Thing is, you got to book your hotel in advance because they fill up pretty quick come tourist season, which is either go right before the spring holiday, Labor Day, Memorial Day, whatever it is, or go right after, because the park opens to the general public in late April, early May. And then you have at least 2 weeks before the general populace start flooding Yellowstone. And then after the August, September holiday, Memorial Day, Labor Day, whatever it is, I can never remember which is which first, to like 2 weeks or so afterwards is the best time to go, because that's when it's either starting to get cold or starting to warm up, depending on do you like spring weather where it can be cold, or do you like autumn weather where it can be warm but starts to cool off. One of the other things, but the last thing I'm going to talk about before I sign off on the second part, is the second time I was there in Yellowstone, I got to celebrate what they call Christmas in July. And what they do is there's the river, the big river that goes through Yellowstone, the Yellowstone River itself. There's a set of islands at a certain point in the river, and you can walk across the water if it's low enough to get to this island. And what we do is, or what they do up there is, they take a Christmas tree, a mini Christmas tree. In fact, the one that actually, they don't take it out there anymore because they planted one that's permanently. It's one of these Christmas trees that doesn't grow over 5 feet tall. And they go out there and they decorate it for Christmas. And what they do is, when they decorate, they actually decorate it in what they call edible decor, because in fact they want to decorate it in such a way that the animals can eat off of it, and there's a lot of it, so it will last for a good period of time. But they go out there and they decorate it with like strings of popcorn and cranberries and just flowers and various edible items. So not only do the people who drive by there can go, oh wow, look, Christmas tree, but the animals can go, oh look, free food. Well, the particular year I was out there, back in the mid-2000s, it snowed. Not a little bit, it snowed. Well, it went up to my ankles. So, a good 6+ inches in the area I was at, which was in the actual basin. But up where the tree was, they measured it to be about 2 feet. And I just kind of went, ha, I'm glad I'm not driving. I'm glad I got to see the tree, but I'm glad I wasn't driving. The day I went to leave, the time that my bus was going to pick me up, they didn't have anybody traveling into Gardner, so I was able to get a couple of my coworkers. Actually, the coworkers who I got to take out there did they rent a car, or was it a vehicle from? Well, one of the people, all three of them were from not Czechoslovakia, something Slovakia, or was it that I don't know. I don't remember the exact name of the area. they were from, but they were all from Europe and or what we would consider Asia, the Russian side of the border. Good people, good friendly people. They were willing to pack up their small car and take me to the bus stop because they were going to go and drive up to Bozeman on their own. So I got a ride to my bus. But for the 3 months I was there, it was fun and beautiful, and I enjoyed it. And not that I would go do it again by myself, but if we ever got the chance via RV, go up there and spend a couple of days, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would really do it in a heartbeat. I used to joke around I used to joke around and say, I'm going to get a permanent year-round job and get us a little apartment inside Yellowstone National Park, because they had an apartment building for permanent residents, permanent workers. One of my bosses lived there. I said, I'm going to get a job up there. I'm going to become a manager. We're going to be either living in one of the frontier cabins or one of the apartments, and that's going to be that's going to be what we do the rest of our life. But I don't dream that no more, because I dream of the ability to have an RV to go wherever I want to, whenever I can, and see different places. But anyhow, this is a long video, and I'm sorry. This is part 2 of my Yellowstone experiences. I don't have a part 3. When I go to do different videos, it will probably start with something else I'm interested in, like Norse mythology. So until next time, well, back up, Jim, back up. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments about my experiences in Yellowstone National Park, go ahead and put it in the comment boxes. I would be more than happy to address them or jot down your questions and do a Q&A video on Yellowstone. If you're new to my channel and choose to join the channel, go ahead and click the subscribe button, and then a bell should pop up, and you click on the bell, and you'll be notified by not Yellowstone, Yahoo, when I put in my next video. Until next time, have a good day. God bless. Be safe. Bye.